Welcome back to the Fear
and Beer podcast,
where we discuss all things Halloween Horror Nights, horror movies,
and just a little bit of beer.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Seamus.
Like scary movies.
Here's Johnny.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You miss me.
Aren't you drinking? I never drink. Why?
Before we get into tonight's episode, we want to remind all of those listening on Apple Podcasts to drop us a 5-star review. It helps us grow as a podcast and build our audience. If you're listening on Spotify or any other platform, follow us, and don't forget to share with friends and family who might have a little bit of the strange in them as well.
And while you're on those socials, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, be sure to find us, Fear and Beer Pod. Give us a like, share, and you can always message us. We love to interact with all you guys. Icons, icons, icons. Icons. You love them, we love them, we can't get enough of them. But for whatever reason, it seems like we just don't get as many new ones
I was going to ask
anymore,
the question.
really.
The question is, we love icons, but are we going to get a new one anytime soon?
Hopefully.
The last
maybe.
new one we got, we talked about this, I think was Lady Luck. Was
21,
She was the last time we got a new
we're
icon.
Creeping up, so this will be the 10th year.
Yeah, so it's almost like
Why not?
It's almost like there should be.
Yeah, it's. It seems like at this point, if it's weird to say, but like I feel like if they're not gonna do it soon, then it feels like we might not get one again because it's already been 10 years.
Yeah, I would think that. Are
they gonna wait till 50?
We didn't go back and do all like the pattern. Like we don't know what the different lengths of time between every new icon, but I just feel like 10 years seems like a good time to do it. And I still think, and we'll talk about some of these people or some of these characters, quote unquote, that I think there's at least one in here that I think they're setting up for it. And we'll talk about it. We've talked about it in the past. But yeah, you would think it'd be kind of like in line to happen this year.
At some point. Well, if you didn't see our post on Instagram, we ran a little poll. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of them. And we asked simply, what HHN character of the past could be an icon? Maybe it has the potential. Maybe it was just a fan favorite that maybe we could twist around in a way that makes sense for them to be back in that role. And we got a crazy amount of suggestions. And usually we just reply to them. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. We don't have an idea yet for the week, so let's just roll with this one. And we'll just kind of spitball here off these different ideas of all the suggestions that everybody kind of put forth for us. So that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and in no way do we know anybody or have heard anything from anybody. This is just what you guys sent us, what we think chance of each of these happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't know anything in like actually happening. So don't take this as like, not that you would, but don't take this as like, oh, we heard this on such and such that this was going to happen. We have no idea.
We are rogues.
This is just having fun with an idea that probably won't even happen, to be honest with you.
But we're going to run with it because that's what we do. So let's get into the beer portion of tonight. And we're dipping back into the well. I think we had this a couple weeks ago. The Pumpkin Ale from Dogfish Head.
Probably did have this one.
A good beer, a fun beer. Let me go show this to the camera.
It's literally because Seamus, again, is cheaped out and forgot to go to the liquor store and look for something new. I promise by next week I will have some additional beers, some new beers. So hopefully we'll have some different stuff. But pumpkin ale, another pumpkin beer. We've had this one before, I think.
I'm not sure if I showed off the bottle before, but I think I bought it because that guy right there, that little pumpkin logo guy, is just super cool. He was staring at me, so I had to take a dive. So we don't really need to spend time really breaking down this beer. This is the first time we get to use our Fear and Beer bottle opener that we've had.
Plug that bad boy. Who is that by?
That's from Hazelton Handmade. It's our friend Alicia.
Yeah, if you've been on our social medias the last couple of weeks, we posted something from her not that long ago. So check her out. Make sure you buy something from her.
There. And let's pour these bad boys and let's get ready to talk some HHN icons.
Are we turning lights on this episode?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go, lights. I'm feeling blinky today.
Feeling a little blinky.
Need a couple beers after this work week, that's for sure.
All
right, I'm going.
I hear you there.
I'm going full blink on this one.
Even though I work
blink
from home.
that. But yeah, so icons potentially happening at this event.
So why don't we just get the obvious one out of the way?
Let's jump right headfirst into it.
I think this one's relatively obvious in the sense that everybody kind of has this same idea. We've been talking about it since this year was announced, or this past year was announced, how it happened, after it happened, during it happened, the whole 9 yards. We all think, at least Nick and I both think, that Pumpkin Lord is our best chance at becoming a new icon. I think he was set up to kind of be that. Maybe not this year, but in the next couple of years.
This has a future.
Hosting his own event or doing something along those lines. At least I don't feel like, from what the house was built like or set up as, and the story that was set up for it in the background, I don't feel like it was the only time we're going to see him. I think we're going to see more Pumpkin Lord, and I think he's going to have bigger things down the road than just being a recurring character.
Yeah, and this one was suggested a handful of times that this character popped up, and for good reason too, because if you go through the house, and we were fortunate enough to do the behind-the-scenes tour of this, so it kind of broke the house down a little bit more and made us kind of understand what was happening in it. So essentially, the Pumpkin Lord grows stronger and stronger every Halloween until he's finally born from, the witches and whatnot. So the end of the house was actually the birth of Pumpkin Lord, and that's like him finally, coming to this earth, I guess, or this realm with all this Halloween goodness. And he is the embodiment of Halloween, classic Halloween. So for me, that would make perfect sense for this event, being that Halloween is October 31st. This is the 31st event.
Yeah, it seems almost too good to be true.
It seems like it's set up for a Grand Slam. Like, the pitch is there. Now, are they going to go in that direction? Who knows? Because they do many things. They always bring in IPs. They always have their own little, whether they just go like some other nostalgia style feel and go like 80s, they go 90s, they go whatever. But with it being the 31st event, I would be very happy to see a very classic Halloween style event. And that pumpkin, the Wicked Grove house was like quintessential Halloween, and that had everything in there: goblins, ghouls, pumpkins, witches, and dead bodies, crows.
Right, and we keep in mind that this event was technically, this past year was supposed to be 31. This obviously event was 30 because it got pushed off a year. I think that the plan was set him up the year prior to 31, and then when year 31 happens, we're going to do a big Halloween celebration and introduce our new icon.
And that's cool how that worked too, because maybe this house, I think this house was planned for
it was
previously, so this was just a stepping stone to get to 31.
They had the t-shirts
with the comic book style. So I wouldn't be surprised. Now again, this is just complete speculation.
Conjecture.
Yeah. But I mean, wouldn't that make sense, having Pumpkin Lord kind of come to the event? And you could do something with like him and Jack, where he's overtaking Jack's power because it is the 31st event. He gets like extra power from the Halloween sense of it, and can really just kind of spread his evil or Halloweenness throughout the event. And it would be cool to have different houses, and again, much like most years where it does have like an overlying theme, each house doesn't necessarily have to be Halloween oriented, but a couple could, and that's all you really need with this event to kind of pull the way through. You're going to have those IPs that technically don't necessarily line up with, quote unquote Halloween, but I think this, if there's a chance for anything to happen, this would be the one that is set up best.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it's obviously why we're starting with him first, because I think it's the one that everybody kind of just assumes it's going to happen. It's pretty, like we said before, it's kind of like almost too perfect.
Yeah.
So it's almost surprising if they don't do that.
I would be very surprised if that was the last we saw of him, especially at this event being the 31st and Halloween 31st. That makes a lot of sense to me.
But why don't you go to the next one? Because the next one's actually pretty interesting. I didn't think of this until you sent me the notes.
So the next one kind of ties into Pumpkin Lord a little bit, and that would be Nathaniel Crowe. So that one, if you aren't aware, was supposed to be the icon for HHN 2008, but they passed over him for Bloody Mary. And his story was pretty cool. He was very Halloween-centric as well, whereas he was like this farmer of a pumpkin patch, and everything was dying. He was a shitty farmer. Nothing could grow until Jack the Clown shows up and tells him that his land was cursed. And he made a deal with Jack to set his circus up there, and then he gives him the whole spiel about like he doesn't understand why Jack doesn't die and all this stuff, and Jack is very kind of just mysterious about it, saying like, oh well, you'll soon find out, whatever. Jack finishes up the circus, leaves the land, and then Nathaniel Crowe starts just bleeding, and he bleeds out like a poem. And I don't remember it obviously verbatim and stuff like that, but the blood subsides from the poem after he reads it back into his body, and then the farm kind of comes to life. He gets pulled in with vines. They strap him down. Birds start like sticking his flesh off and just deteriorating him. And then a candle's kind of placed in his mouth, and he's like a jack-o'-lantern, like all just cut up and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's cool because he was actually in the pumpkin house and Wicked Growth. It was a small scene. If you did see a person, like it was a fake body being attacked by crows, that was a small homage to Nathaniel Crowe, someone that hasn't really been seen ever, really, because it was really just fan lore that this came out of. It was like a story treatment. It's funny how an icon that got passed over in 2008 is still kind of making its rounds and popping up in random houses.
Well, what makes it interesting in hearing the story is that you almost wonder if maybe there's a little bit of an homage to him within the Pumpkin Lord character. Mm-hmm. And there's a very good chance that they could turn around and kind of combine the two and say, hey, this is our new icon. Nathaniel Crowe came back to life as Pumpkin Lord, and the big reveal in this event is that Pumpkin Lord is actually Nathaniel Crowe, who's getting back at Jack for ruining his pumpkin patch or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I could see that happening.
That would be a really cool kind of take on the story. Plus, it would feel like you just said, like how the crowd. The fans have kind of like given back to the event a little bit by adopting some of that lore that comes up from fan stories and fan fiction and all that kind of thing. Yeah. I think that'd be kind of cool. I had never heard of him until you sent me the information. Yeah. So it's actually kind of cool. Again, I'm the newbie here on the podcast, so
I like the idea of him being the being that was converted into Pumpkin Lord or whatever. As I can't remember again the witch's spell, but I think they needed blood and bones and stuff. And it would be cool if the blood and bones was Nathaniel Crowe, and that's where Pumpkin Lord came from.
You could literally just take the name and like the treatment of the story and do your own thing with it. They don't necessarily have to go completely based on what you said, but like the same idea. Like you could find it.
Jack cursed
this farmer who grew pumpkins, and then they needed a way to bring up the Pumpkin Lord, so they used his remains to. And there's a lot of ways you can go with it. I think that would be really interesting. So that kind of ties into the Pumpkin Lord idea.
Yeah, those are pretty much. That's like 1 and 1B, I guess. I could definitely see Pumpkin Lord.
But the more we talk about it, I'm kind of talking myself into it.
It does. It's a very deep, and we know that HHN lore likes to go deep. With a couple of these characters we have going on later on the list, they had extensive backgrounds, which I didn't translate to our notes because I just didn't feel like spending so much time on certain characters when we could talk for an hour about one of these characters, and that would just be boring to some.
And come to find out, Nathaniel's farm was in Cary, Ohio.
And it was, yes.
You heard it here first, folks, on the Hhn Bear podcast, when they inevitably announced that Nathaniel Crowe is the Pumpkin Lord and he is our newest icon. Remember, you heard it here on your favorite podcast ever.
Yeah.
We had nothing to do. We didn't do anything with the. We
just put some pieces together.
We just put some ideas out in the ether
and hope somebody picked up on it.
And it just picked up and it rolled, and it's such a good idea that they probably already thought about it 3 years ago, and we're just taking credit for it.
All right, so next up is a complete 180.
Yeah, this one. So this is where we start to kind of got to get into a little bit. I mean, there are some. I guess the further on the list. Because this isn't in any particular order.
No, this is no order. This was order.
There are some that kind of would make sense.
But I think
less so than the first two. But this one, this one's kind of out there.
This one's out there. There's two that are very out there, and these were all suggestions from various people on social media. And the order that they're in is based on just what I think the order that they were sent in. So if you're following along, trying to think one is relevant, the next one, we're getting more relevant.
I want to rephrase it. It's not out there in the sense that this is crazy. I think it's a cool idea. Obviously, is it going to happen? Probably not. No. But it's a cool idea. It would be cool to see.
So we're talking about Maximum Carnage, which actually was a house at HHN 2002 when it was the Islands of Fear. Yeah. And the storyline is that much of the comic book. It's pretty much with that. I mean, in the comic book, it's Spider-Man and Venom kind of team up to take down Carnage, who has found a way to mutate his blood so that once he was separated from his host, Cletus Cassidy could actually still summon the symbiote of Carnage and wreak havoc. And this was when Spider-Man and Venom finally decided they needed to team up and eliminate Carnage.
Right.
And this was, I think it was like a 15 book series. Is probably the best Spider-Man long run comic that's solely his versus various stuff that he's involved in, whether it's Secret Wars, Infinity Gauntlet, stuff like that. But I mean, in the book, it was like Captain America, Black Cat, Cloak and Dagger, Iron Fist, Morbius, and some other various characters. But in the house was more like the villain, so it was like Scream, Mephisto, Electro, the Punisher, and this is a house that so long ago that I didn't even do this at that point. I wasn't at the event at this time, but I don't see Carnage coming back, especially because now Disney owns Marvel.
Well, right. This is why I think I said it was out there. It's not that I think it's a bad idea. It's just it's not going to happen, solely because of rights issues. It would be awesome to kind of see one of these characters kind of come back, but the thing we like about icons is that, at least for me, is that they are original ideas for the most part. Yeah. And they are. I mean, they're definitely borrowed. So if you wanted to do a character, much like Jack is, to me, very much like a crazier Joker. Yeah. You could do some sort of symbiote-like alien creature.
As a icon, yeah.
Right, but it just can't be Carnage, especially now, because even if they could get the rights, you imagine how much it would cost Universal just to have that right. And at the time, 2002... They already own the rights.
That was 1 year after Spider-Man 1 was in theaters.
Exactly. It's not like it's too difficult. It wasn't too difficult at the time to get those rights. So now it would be a little bit harder.
But... And the event back then wasn't what it is today.
No, of course not.
The today crowd, I don't think, would be as psyched to see a comic book-y house like Carnage. They want to see the slashers, the Netflix series, whatever.
Right. I mean, I think the only
when you're holding up Beetlejuice and Maximum Carnage.
If we're talking like indie or independent comics, there's some really good independent horror comics, different story, but those are even those are really underground and only certain people really know much about them.
Yeah. I mean, if we did a icon that was a cartoonist or a comic book writer that has got the power to bring us comics to life and
that would be cool.
Havoc through that way, I think that would be a cool way to kind of tie into the whole comic book sense of that. But I think using characters from comic books, such as Marvel or whatever, I think that that ship has sailed, I think, unfortunately.
I would agree.
So let's get into the next one, because this is another one that I think is a little bit of a stretch, but I think could work done correctly.
So this one, to me, is interesting. I have a little bit of a unique, well, not maybe not unique, but a different take on this than I think maybe everyone else, what they're thinking. So we're talking about puppet theater, right? That's what we're going to do. So puppet theater, obviously, probably my opinion, second best house this past year, behind Pumpkin Lord. There are a lot of things going on in this. There's a lot of characters, a lot of different scare actors, and the cool thing about it was they weren't all like the same scare actor.
Everything was different.
Very different characters in each scene. My personal thing is there's too many to really pick one. Yeah. So my thought would be, if you're gonna do something along these lines, create a new character and call him the Puppet Master, or call him the Troop Leader, or something like that. Yeah. And you could potentially, I know we've
like
got
Pasix puppet show, like create that Pasix character,
right? Create that character that we may not have seen in the house, but he was always there, or she was always there in the background as kind of like the leader, and then come to find out, oh, she's the reason that the earthquake happened, or whatever. Yeah. But have that kind of like Puppet Master. Yeah. Be the new icon, and she can control, or he can control people using like, puppet, like I make you a puppet now or whatever. Right?
I like that. I like the dark ventriloquist style thing. Again, puppet theater was probably a house I hit every night or close to it. Definitely my second favorite. Very close to Wicked Growth, because I just, the aesthetic worked, the characters worked. The multi-phase character was awesome. The Piccolo, the dancing clown, was awesome. The scare through there, the whole aesthetic of it was amazing. But I think if you wanted to pull an icon from the house, you wouldn't be able to. I think you need to do what you're saying, is create that main villain character. And look, we have a lot of icons that are the caretaker, the usher, the director,
right?
You could do the puppet master. Mm-hmm. The puppet master could be a pretty cool icon. And with that though, it's a little bit trickier, I think, because I think that's a hard aesthetic to place throughout multiple houses. When you have something like the director, okay, it's movie oriented, so like really any IP could fall under his jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. You know, the caretaker, it's, you know, I mean, dissecting the bodies, you have the cemetery, you have all different ways to place that character. But the puppet master might be a little bit hard to disguise throughout the other houses, but I think it could work. Do I think that's a direction they'll go into? I don't think so. I would love to see it though.
Yeah,
I would love to see the puppet master as a icon.
To be fair, not to say the rest of this episode is going to be kind of boring, but obviously we both think that the Pumpkin Lord makes the most sense. That would totally. I mean, it seems like they're building up to be he is the next icon.
Yeah,
but they could throw a 180 at us or throw a curveball and say, well, you may think that, but, you know, we actually were setting up this character.
The Puppet Master.
Yeah. I mean, the name works. It's very... It
was a well-received house.
It was well-received. It kind of goes down that list. Like, you were just going to go down the list of icons. Like, he kind of is like that next... Or she's that next icon.
Yeah.
In a way. Because it all kind of follows the same pattern.
Yeah.
Like, you've got someone who might be in a unique field of... You know, career field, like, they lead a troop of puppet master or puppeteers, much like how the caretaker is in the field of what we think is like embalmment, or whatever you want to call it. The guys that embalm human beings when they pass away. But you see what I'm going for? It's like it seems like it could kind of be along those lines, whereas the Pumpkin Lord is more of a demon who's come back to life or has been risen through black magic. Now, that isn't to say there aren't other characters. Obviously, Fear is very much
puppet master-ish too, that with his totems and all that stuff.
Yeah, but he's also kind of like a demon from another realm type.
Yeah, this will be a little bit more earthly. I can't remember from the
tour. Is Fear like the new like leader, or I forget how it works.
In his year, he was revealed that he was like the leader of the icons. He was the one behind the scenes.
Because in the icons' house this past year, you
walk into
his lantern.
So he's pretty much he was the one that with his totems was controlling all the icons from behind the scenes.
Right. Okay. So again, I'm with you. I don't think it's gonna happen. I still think Pumpkin Lord's probably the best bet if we're gonna get a new one. But it would be interesting to see if maybe they were like, "Hey, I gotcha. We're actually creating so and so, and they're the puppet master and." You know, they're the reason why there's the puppet theater house and all that sort of thing. So, that would be kind of cool, but a little different.
Yeah. Next up, we have another pseudo icon, and that would be Eddie. So Eddie was suggested a couple times to us as well. And if you don't know, Eddie was Jack's brother. He is in love with the 80s slashers. He wields the chainsaw. He's been throughout this event in various houses, scare zones. Lastly, obviously, last year at Eddie's Lights Camera Haction, Eddie's Revenge, his scare zone, which he pulled all various scare zones. It was like a best of mashup of the previous 30 years or whatever. Eddie was originally supposed to be the icon for 2001. We know the story. It got pushed and bumped because of the 9/11 attacks. They wanted something less realistic, less violent. So instead of chainsaws and blood, it was Jack and like green gooey blood. They kind of simplified it a little bit.
Yep.
But because of that, Eddie kind of got pushed to the wayside and didn't really ever reclaim that glory that he was set up to have. Now, with Eddie's Scare Zone being as well received as it was, I think there is a revived interest in him. But I think at this point, his story has been fleshed out enough that I don't think he'll take over. I don't think he'll take on the mantle as an icon itself for a full event.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, I'm the newbie here, so I don't really know a whole lot about him other than what has been told to me, and obviously from this past event, the Scare Zone was cool. I was not wild about it, but I think that's just because I don't have that nostalgia with it, like a lot of people do. Like they remember all these different characters.
Yeah, like it's nice to see that again.
But I feel like he was kind of like. it's kind of like John Carpenter on the new Halloween movies. Like, he has very little to do with it.
He's there,
but they
but
slapped his name on it to
Yeah.
say that John Carpenter's Halloween or whatever you want to call it. There's just maybe he's a bad example. I'm trying to think of a better example, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like they
The
slapped
brand name
Eddie's
was
name on it, and then the real attraction were all the different, like, oh, remember that scare zone? Remember that scare zone? You know, the member berry type thing, like all these member berries. Not to say that Eddie wasn't there. Eddie was obviously there, but I don't think it was.
But would it have been the same without him?
Right? Like, would people have cared whether or not he was part of it?
Yeah.
Like, if it had just been, like, you know, scare zones of years past or whatever.
Yeah.
Or the 30 years of scare zones, whatever you want to call it, and it wasn't solely entitled Eddie's whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe, like you said, I don't think anybody would have really noticed.
Yeah.
And again, that's not me throwing shade at Eddie. I think he's a fun character, but I don't think there's enough there.
Yeah.
And he's kind of like been there, done that.
And exactly. It's a little. I think it's too little
too
late.
Too late. Yeah, I know what you're trying to say, and the fact that the whole '80s slasher thing, it's been done to death. I don't know if they can really.
And they've had multiple events where it was strictly slashers.
Right.
So
can you really do another icon reveal or release party, what you want to call it?
Yeah.
With a dude who's like been there, but not truly there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, not trying to offend any of the hardcore Eddie fans out there.
They were out there.
We get it.
He does have a fan following.
We get it, but I personally don't think that it would work. I think there's too many good stories that they could use with even other existing characters that they haven't really done a whole lot with that I think would be better than Eddie.
Yeah. So let's talk about another existing character.
This one was brought up actually by
a couple people.
A few people. Jamie, your girlfriend specifically.
Pete, I think, was talking
Pete
about.
may have talked about it. Some friends of ours. Yeah. Do you want to go into it?
I'll go into this one because I know the next one is definitely up your alley. So this one is an interesting one because when we're talking about characters of past, which was kind of what the original post was about.
He was a pretty prominent member this year too.
Yeah. And that's HR Blood and Guts. So he was at the HR Blood and Guts Presents Holidays of Horror in HHN 21. Mm-hmm. So essentially his story is he was a creature feature TV host and he became, after that, kind of became a taxidermist. And then he finally took his talents to none other, Cary, Ohio. And then from there he started working at Channel 21 doing like holiday specials. Yep. This was the basis of the house. And over the years, the ratings declined. He took the TV crew and the producer of the show and tortured them on TV during their holiday specials, whether it's the Easter, the St. Patrick's Day, 4th of July, whatever. But he was most recently seen in the Welcome to Scary Ohio house. Those fond memories. I think that was one of the last houses I went through. It was the first house we ever.
It was the first house. It was the first house we. No, it wasn't the first house we did because we went. Was it?
They walked us over to Cary.
They walked us to Cary. So I guess you're right. Yeah, you're right. Sorry, it was Cary because everyone was cheering.
We were cheering and clapping when the smoke came on. Yep.
Yeah, you're right. So opening
fond memories. But yeah, no, this was a small section in the house, but he is one of those characters that stands out because if you're looking back at some of your favorite houses, the characters in there are pretty. Sometimes they're just blanket characters. They're just bland. They don't have a name. They're just like the figure or the whatever, and they're just like another evil creature. So like not much of a story you can pull out of them. And we have a couple of those coming up in a little bit. But this one like has a very intricate story. He has ties to the past. He has a very interesting look about him. Now the question is, do we think he could pull off being an icon?
I think that his character. I mean, personally, I think his character could, very well pull off being an icon. I think he's different. He's not so for example, to me, Eddie, just to go back a minute, is very much he is Jack's brother. He very much is another Jack character, even though he's not a clown. He's still that crazy serial killer thing. Blood and Guts is at least different. Mm-hmm. There isn't really another character icon that I can think of that is solely related to trash TV.
Yeah, he's very by himself.
Very different. Again, follows that weird, unique career path type thing. Yeah. Because they all have a weird, unique, some sort of job or career. They're not really crazy careers, but yeah. So I think it could work. My question would be to you: is that none of the icons? So the icon on the Cary stuff is very much separate of each other in a way.
They tie in throughout the time.
Do they?
They have the drive-in is in Carrie and the caretaker
Okay,
is Carrie.
so then to me, then yes, it would totally fit that he would be the next icon. My only question would be is his own house is what? You say 21, so that was 10 years ago. 10 years ago.
That 11 because of the skip of the year.
That was the year that they introduced Lady Luck.
Yeah.
So my thing would be like, if they were going to introduce him as his own icon, why wouldn't he have been an icon that year?
Yeah.
But then again, who knows? I mean, it could be because they had planned ahead of time for her to be the icon. Yeah. We all know that she didn't exactly get the greatest of receptions when they first released her. Yeah. I still think she's super underrated as an icon.
Oh, she is.
She's been given very little to work with. Yeah. So I think that they could potentially say, all right, well, we kind of screwed up with her. Yeah. Let's do Blood and Guts like we should have. Yeah. And maybe we'll make him an icon. So yes, I think that he could personally pull it off.
The thing I'm not sure I can say that is and it sucks because I want to, but like a lot of his basis is like the holidays. So are they going to do a whole Easter themed house and then a whole St. Patrick's Day house? And maybe.
It's actually a terrible way to do it.
And I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea, but I think the way that HHN is going, obviously, with all these different things, and maybe they do, like, you know, in years past they had Krampus. So maybe you could, like, find a horror movie of big fame and kind of theme that as H&R Blood and Guts Presents, whatever. You know, like,
or
his C-tier version of that.
They could also easily come up with a story where he goes back to Carrie and he takes over Channel 21 and becomes like the program director at the Channel 21, and then you can do stuff with him and the director, for example. You can kind of tie them together a little bit for certain things, and they could call him like the producer or something along those lines. Now, saying that, do I think that it's too close to the director? I think so, maybe a little bit. Yeah. But I think they're just different enough that they could kind of have their own lanes and stick with that. But who knows?
I'd like to see it. I don't know how possible it is. I think like when you're also looking at like these second tier characters, I guess we'll call them. Yeah. I lump in the Eddies and stuff like that. I don't know if he's as popular.
He's a supporting actor.
Yeah, I don't think he's gotten that fanfare bump that he deserves.
No, and I feel like
I think he deserves it, but I don't think he has it.
But I think that's the thing is like if they were to make him an icon, it's going to be great for guys like you who understand the history of HHN, dig it, are really looking for that retro oomph. But for the general public, they won't. There's just not enough there for them to be like excited about it. Yes. Unlike like a Pumpkin Lord, which there's a lot there. Everybody remembers pumpkins and jack-o'-lanterns and all that Halloween goodness. Yes. He's just very recognizable.
You don't need to have a big backstory with a Pumpkin Lord character,
right? And you can, but there's also more to build off of too. Like there's so much you can go with that type of character than you can with necessarily HR Blood and Guts. Now I get it. Same with the Eddie fans, HR Blood and Guts fans. There's no shade to the character. We think he's a great character. But I think at the end of the day, he's a little more limited than some of the other ones we've talked about.
And that's where I think it might held him back. But would I love to see it? Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. So the next one, like you said, I'm going to be down with this because, again, this is still my favorite scare zone out of all the events I've been to, which is 2. But it's Viking Undead. Obviously, there wasn't any real major character, so much like the Puppet Theater, you're going to have to come up with some overarching character. Yeah. But that's pretty easy. You come up with like a
dead Odin or something.
A Leif Erikson. Just like an undead Leif Erikson or whatever. Yeah. But the point is that you would create some like leader of the undead Vikings or your leader of the cannibal Vikings and give him or her a basically an icon treatment. Yeah. Now, I think with him, it's kind of like the same issue we've had with a few of the other ones we've kind of talked about already, is that can you build an entire event around that one character? Is it kind of limited in the sense that like you can do a house
Norse mythology
Vikings? So I think to me, as much as I loved the Scare Zone and I love the character, and I know we did our icon creation with the 365 guys, shout out. Yeah. But and I know my character was the Viking Undead character. I think even then, I don't know with what we've gotten already this past year and the other characters that really haven't been given enough love. I'm not sure there's enough there yet to consider it an icon. I totally want to see a Viking Undead house. Like, I think that there's so much there that they could do a house with the weather effects and being on a ship and all that stuff. There's so many things you can do with it.
Yeah.
And I think personally, as a fan of that Scares Zone, I'd rather see it come back as a house than really doing anything icon-wise.
I same exact thing. I think that the house is completely warranted.
Like, it needs to happen. Like, it's one of those things where they have to do it. Like,
I think it's a very fun house. It's an amazing story. But again, can Norse mythology be an overall event?
Right, and
I don't think so.
I don't think so either, and it's very...
I'd love it to, but it's very limited.
It's limited. It's also much like HHN Blood and Guts, the idea that it's only going to appeal to certain people. Mm-hmm. Like, not everybody is into, like, the Norse mythology. Like, like, you know, I'm really... I dig that type of old world, some of that, like, early type stuff. Like, obviously, I love Thor as a Marvel character, but I also love the stories that come out of, like, that old mythology. So to me, it's fun. But for certain people, they may not get enough out of it to really warrant building an entire like event around them. And that's the thing. Like, we gotta understand that they release an icon, they have to build the event around that icon. That's kind of what they do. Like, every icon when they've released it, I think, as far as correct me if I'm wrong, but every icon that they've released, they've built the event kind of around that icon.
Yes. Yep. And they have an overarching story that, you know, doesn't necessarily tie in 1,000%, but there is some sort of sprinkling. But it all has to tie in it somehow.
So how do you tie in a Norse undead god type thing with like 10 houses? I don't know if I don't know if you can do it.
I mean, like you said, like, you could, but it's not going to appeal to most people.
It's going to be hard. I mean, and we obviously we have tons of respect for the designers and the story writers and all these different people that come up with these ideas, and they probably definitely could do it.
But people want variety.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the problem. Is I think it would be too similar to really have that much variety there.
One house would be amazing. We hope that happens. But as an icon, I don't think it could
going
work.
back to just to kind of give you an idea, going back to Pumpkin Lord, just imagine an entire event based around all these different Halloween mythologies and Pumpkin Lord kind of being at the center of that.
Yeah.
There's so many things you can do with that. Whereas with Undead Vikings, there's not quite a lot you can do.
Another Valhalla house.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing. So
next up actually was an icon. So we don't have to spend too much time on this character because it's probably not going to ever happen.
Let's say pseudo-icon. I know that they iconed it, but I don't know.
They kind of retconned it after the fact.
Yeah.
But this is Bloody Mary. It was the icon in 2008. And this was a kind of a blend. This was Dr. Mary Agana, the psychiatrist from the 1950s. But this was a blend between a licensed property, which was Bloody Mary,
which is ironic to think
an
that
original
it's
story
licensed, but
that's where it kind of falls into that weird thing of,
because they haven't really used her.
No,
I mean, they used her in the Icon's house, sort of.
They used her scream, and it was mirrors in a short room. And
you're supposed to assume that it's Bloody Mary.
So like it was a nod to her, but there's something with the rights that like they're not allowed to do that anymore. I don't think. I could be way off. That could just be hearsay.
No, I'm pretty sure because when we talked to, it wasn't Justin, but the other Holly. When we talked to Holly, excuse me. When we talked to Holly, she kind of alluded to it, kind of being, as far as I remember,
untouchable.
A little bit untouchable. So my thing is, I think they consider her an icon.
Yeah, she had her,
but it's not blatant. It's not like over. It's not like honestly, we to me, Lady Luck deserves a rehash. Like, give her another event.
Oh yeah,
that's my thing. Granted, that's my personal opinion.
Let's take a gamble on Lady Luck.
Like, give her another chance. Bloody Mary just isn't gonna happen.
No, it's not. And I didn't go to that event, so I can't say if it was good or not. But for me, the whole Bloody Mary mythology is just kind of weak. I'm surprised that they were able to pull an event out of it. Anyways, and this was the character I was talking about before when I said if we talked about their backstory, we'd be talking for an hour. Because there is an extremely extensive backstory on her. And if you do want to read it, check out the HHN wiki page. There's a lot to talk about, going from her journal entries in the 1950s all the way throughout her life and how she gets summoned back. But it's something that doesn't need to be rehashed again.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, we didn't really include this person or just this type of idea on the list. But talking about Bloody Mary, I don't know what it's made me think of her, but I'd almost expect maybe taking another chance with, say, someone like Billie Eilish, because I know she's a huge fan of the event. Mm-hmm. If they wanted to give her another shot, work with her on coming up with some sort of unique icon to include.
Yeah.
Rather than like a Bloody Mary style character all over again.
Yeah, folklore thing. But the next three.
Well, one made me laugh out loud.
Pretty out there. So these ones are gonna go.
Were these ones suggested by people?
These were suggested.
You guys are the best. Like, I'm not gonna lie, this thing it made me chuckle because it's the name of it. But
let me just say that none of these three are going to happen.
Well, the first one is not completely out of the realm because they've already worked with him.
But as an icon.
No, I get it. Yeah. I don't think he himself.
So let's go. We'll knock these out pretty quick.
Let's do the first one.
There's not really backstory with a lot of these.
No, there isn't.
But so the first one was either Rob Zombie or Living Dead Girl, which is one of his songs.
So, all right. So, hear me out. Obviously, Rob Zombie is not going to happen. We're not going to get a Rob Zombie icon because we love Rob Zombie. We love his music. He had his own thing.
It's a pure
He's
person.
got movies. He's a real person. Not going to happen. But the idea of using the Living Dead Girl character from that song, not necessarily completely out of their own possibility.
They don't have a zombie icon.
No, we don't. They have a working relationship with Rob Zombie already, obviously. I could see them working with him and maybe reworking that story or maybe fleshing out that story a little bit and creating the Living Dead Girl character.
From Cary, Ohio.
Right. Obviously, the problem is I think it runs into the same issue as the Vikings and a few of the other characters. Is there enough there to do something with?
Oh, yeah.
What I would love to see again, same with the Vikings, is let's do a Living Dead Girl house.
Yeah,
that's a cool idea if you really think about it.
I think a lot of these ones plateau,
right, and do that Rob Zombie Scare Zone, but as a house. Like I would love to go through a Rob Zombie house
music video
where it's just music videos and not just music videos, but like bring that stuff to life.
Yeah.
Because that would be disorienting. That would be kind of crazy.
And you can write a story to intertwine all of that.
It doesn't have to be super scary, but it could just be like a really crazy experience.
And just cool characters.
And then center it around the Living Dead Girl.
Yeah.
That would be kind of cool. But,
so, icon, no.
Is it going to happen? Probably not.
No.
But I think there's things you could do with that. Yep. So it's an interesting The second one is awesome. I'm not going to lie to you. This is awesome.
Robosaurus.
Robocaris.
Or Robosaurus, whatever it was. But it actually was. It was a mechanical robot dinosaur.
Like the ones you see at like a monster truck show.
Yeah.
That's legit.
But it was actually at one of the HHNs, and it breathes fire. It's pretty much like an 18-wheeler truck that converts into a dragon.
That's pretty awesome.
I'm not sure.
Is it going to be an icon?
How that could be an icon.
It would be legit.
Was its giant metal egg birthed in Cary, Ohio?
Not gonna lie to you, if you give me like a robo zombified like Godzilla and call it Robocaris and say it's an icon, I'd buy it.
Sure,
I'd buy it. I mean, I'd probably be like one of 3 people that are like cool with it. But it's an interesting idea. It definitely made me chuckle.
I love our people.
So thank you, whoever suggested that, because that's an awesome idea. But is it gonna happen? No.
Okay, and then this next one was suggested twice.
Twice?
2 times.
By different people.
2 different people suggested this.
And they don't know each other, as far as we know.
As far as I know, that these were completely unassisted.
This is kind of phenomenal.
And I had to research what this was, because I typed it into Google. I was like, I don't know.
No idea what this is.
The suggestion was simply HHN Bear.
Okay.
So I had to search that.
So explain this to me. What is HHN Bear?
So it's a bear. It was Papa Bear from the Scary Tales Once Upon a Nightmare in 2008.
Okay.
It also appeared in Jack Presents 25 Years of Monsters Mayhem.
Okay, so it had multiple appearances.
It appears in the Scary Tales, but it's Papa Bear, essentially, from the Goldilocks story.
All right.
So how could HHN Bear be an icon?
So, all right. So now that you've kind of explained to me what this is, because I'm not going to... The name made me laugh.
Yeah.
The fact that more than one person has suggested it
Bear
says to me that there is a fan base out there that remembers Papa Bear. You know what's crazy though? I could see it happening. So is it as iconic as, say, a living pumpkin? No. But we both liked the Scary Tales house this year, right? Or whatever.
I love the Scary Tales.
The story,
saga.
Really
all
good
the houses
stuff.
are always fun.
So would it necessarily have to be Papa Bear? No, I think that'd be kind of wild.
Yeah.
To have the bear be the icon, but if you wanted to kind of turn that Scary Tales idea into a
whole theme,
yep, you could easily do a Scary Tales icon theme.
I think so too.
Event.
my thing is with the icons, I think it has to be something that talks. I think it has to be a person. For me.
I mean, and you could make it talk. You could say, "Oh, he's got a voice." I mean, in the old fairy tale, they did talk to Goldilocks.
Man, bear, pig.
Right, exactly. I mean, they could do it. It's not out of the realm of possibility for them to like kind of retcon it a little bit and say, "Well, he actually can talk."
Yeah, I love the houses that he's been a part of. I don't know if this is a necessarily icon thing. I don't know if this is quality for the icons. Jack the Clown, Chance, the Usher, the Caretaker.
Let's be honest.
Bear.
If HHN Bear was an icon, he would low key
probably be the favorite.
He would be I would enjoy him more than Jack. And I know them fighting words. I know that makes some people heated.
Oh.
But I'm not gonna lie to you. I am not a Jack fan, and I've said it before. I would totally be down with HHN Bear.
Oh man, but
is it gonna happen? No.
All right,
but that's a great idea. So thank you whoever suggested that because I had no idea that existed.
And then this is our last suggestion, and it was simply body collectors. Now, body collectors.
Was this a house?
This was 3 houses.
3 different houses.
So,
okay.
Body collectors are essentially a part of, if you remember back to our lesson of the Terra Crentis.
Yep.
The body collectors essentially, it's a big storage factory.
Mm-hmm.
They take the body parts, the organs, whatever, and they turn it into various items. This was a house at Tales of Terror in 2005, and then they had a prequel house, Collections of the Past, that was at Reflections of Fear.
Yep.
In 2008, it was like Victorian London.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had Recollections at HHN 25, which actually took place, it kind of
in the
merged
asylum.
Carrie High.
Yep.
It took place in Shady Brook Asylum, where they were collecting bodies there.
Interesting.
Now, body collectors, I think, was more of an occupation. That's like their title. They're the body collectors. The characters themselves were just called like the gentlemen, and they had like these like white faced. They were taken similarly from the term from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. There's characters in that series that are similar to that, like a whited out mask, almost like suits and stuff like that.
Well, it's kind of like Slender Man then, because Slender Man's that same idea.
Similar thing, yes. So they got a cool look, and the name The Gentleman is pretty cool. Body Collectors is a very highly held house, and there's 3 of them. It's a part of the Terra Crentis. I mean, it's got a lot of lure there. Everyone loves that.
Right.
They answer to her, the Terra Queen. They also answer to the Storyteller, technically, because Storyteller kind of layered there. But the Gentleman, I'm curious if the Gentleman could hold up the mantle of icon.
I would say no, and the only reason I'm kind of against it is that, like I just said, it sounds very Slender Man. Mm-hmm. And regardless of how you feel about that character, where he comes from, I mean, he was born on the internet. It was one of those like Reddit type stories that kind of grew through the internet.
Yeah.
They made games about him. They filmed a movie about him.
Yeah.
There is some. If they were going to do this, they'd have to kind of redesign them a little bit and make sure that they're kind of their own characters.
Yeah.
The fact that they pulled a lot of the ideas from Buffy too would probably be an issue.
Yep.
So they would have to come up with their own redesign or their own idea as to what the gentlemen look like.
Yeah.
Then going kind of with what they were in the past, just because of those reasons. Plus, there have been some issues with the Slenderman character with, crimes being committed in the name of this person.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
there's some real life shit that has happened that isn't great.
Yeah.
So I think they'd have to contend with that too.
Yeah.
Maybe not intentional. I mean, maybe not directly, but is it something that they want to get into? Like,
No.
do they want to start that open
Yeah.
that can of worms? Who knows? And they could totally redesign it and that sort of thing. My own problem with it is, if I'm getting a new icon, I want it to be something different that isn't necessarily part of another icon's story.
Yes.
Like, I understand Chance kind of being Jack's sidekick. Like, I get that. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I want something from the Terra Crentis lore when we already have the Terra Queen as an icon.
Yeah, it's tough to take an icon, take their story, pull a character from the story, which is already beneath them, take a character from their story and say they're of equal value.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily line
doesn't
up.
necessarily translate. You could do it. I think that, yes, you could make it an event around it. I think there's enough there. But I think, are you pulling from that Terra Crenta stuff and then doing like a combined Terra Queen and Gentleman or whatever you want to call them?
Yeah.
Like shared icon. That's why I still think, going back to Pumpkin Lord, out of everything we've talked about, he's obviously the strongest
contender.
He's the strongest contender. Just because he's new. He's kind of got his own story, his own backstory.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to pull things from other universes or other icons' backstories to reinforce the character.
Yes.
That's my own opinion. I don't. People probably think differently, and that's fine. I just personally think that I don't know if it'd work.
Yeah, that's the toughest thing. I think the Body Collectors is a very long tenured series throughout the event. And I think it's gained a notoriety that it deserves because the houses were, from all accounts, amazing. But I think that's kind of where they stay. I think it stays as that. Are there more houses to come and more stories to tell from them? Probably.
Well, my idea...
At some point,
right.
yes.
So,
sure.
I have an idea where if, let's say, Pumpkin Lord is the new icon, which we all hope that he is, or at least I hope that he is, he's going to need someone to collect bodies to make more of a pumpkin army, to make more pumpkin minions.
Add to his,
So maybe he calls upon the collectors to come help him collect more bodies. That's a thing. It's just one. There you go, Universal.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
That's just another idea you could potentially use. And as guests, we are the new bodies being collected by the collectors for the Pumpkin Lord army. So who knows? I just don't see him as necessarily being the next icon, or them being the next icons.
Yeah, no, I don't see that happening, and I think we started out this episode maybe flip-flopped. I think we could have probably ended with Pumpkin Lord.
Yeah.
Because I think it's safe to say that for us is the most tangible idea.
Yeah, if we're going to talk about which ones we think is going to happen, obviously we think it's Pumpkin Lord.
Yes.
I don't think any of the other ones have any real shot.
Yeah.
I think you can make a case for a few of them.
Yeah.
I think for the others, they're great thoughts.
Like Pumpkin Lord for sure. Would HR Blood and Guts be fun? Yes. Would the Puppet Master be fun? That'd be amazing. But I think the one that is lined up easiest
is Pumpkin Lord.
For creative is Pumpkin Lord.
Yeah.
So that's where I think I sit on all those ideas. And thank you for everyone for reaching out, because we just created a whole episode. We've been talking for, what does it say?
Almost an hour.
50 minutes on.
We're pretty good at that.
On your suggestions. So yes, we do read your comments. We do respond. And this is awesome that we got to do this, because this episode is a direct correlation between the relationship of you and us. And without you,
this episode wouldn't have happened.
We wouldn't have happened.
We wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah. So please interact with us. The
well's running dry, guys. We need ideas.
We got plenty more for you at some point.
To be totally honest,
it's fun to talk of a topic that was started essentially.
Going along from what he's saying is that if you guys have ideas that you want to hear us talk about, or maybe, hey, I was thinking about this. What is your thought on it? We would love to hear those ideas, because it would help us generate ideas for episodes. So if there's things you want us to talk about, let us know.
Yeah.
Even we would love to do at some point. We would love to do almost like an interaction with the audience type episode. Like send us questions, like a Q&A type thing, and we'll just do an episode answering your questions.
Oh yeah.
So we'll talk about that for the future. But if you have anything else that you guys want us to talk about on an episode, let us know.
Yeah, let's do. So until next time, next week it is going to be the beginning of the month, which means we're going to be doing the killer reviews. We'll try and drag Kevin in on this one. Maybe bring him into our studio. It is February,
so we'll have to look.
We did My Bloody Valentine. We'll have to look at that. There is a new Texas Chainsaw movie coming out.
That is true. We
also did Texas Chainsaw, so
that is true.
If you have ideas, again, reach out. Let us know.
Yeah, that's a good idea too. If you guys have some low key underground movies you want us to talk about and you don't think we've seen, send them our way, because we always could use movie ideas to talk about and kill the reviews, especially if they're funny or unintentionally funny. And I love talking to Kevin about some of those unintentionally funny movies that we. And really enjoy talking about.
Always seems to happen that way. But, until next time, killer reviews next week. This is Nick.
And this is Seamus.
Be Hans.
It's cursed. It's got a death curse.
It's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare. girl.
And again, I would just like to thank Vampire Stepdad for letting us use his music for our intro and outro music. So if you would, just go check him out, Spotify, Facebook. Again, that is Vampire Stepdad.